must have this metabolic motor. It is absolutely essential for life. Every living cell has it, the ability to extract energy from its environment, to supply energy for the reproduction of that cell and other cell needs. But that metabolic motor can only be produced by life. Now the riddle becomes this: how, when no life existed, did substances come into being which are absolutely essential for life, but can only be produced by life? You see the problem? You have the same problem, for example, with DNA. Deoxyribonucleic acid. You've probably seen pictures of the genetic code, the double helix strands of the genetic code, DNA, is absolutely essential for life. But DNA can only be produced by life. How, when no life existed, did DNA and RNA and other substances come into being which are absolutely essential for life but can only be produced by life? Well, the evolutionist has no answer. So he says, well, you must assume by faith that contrary to the laws of science, somehow it occurred. And you as a student must say, but professor, I'm not interested in your faith. What is the scientific evidence? It's like that old Wendy's commercial. You know, where's the beef? Where's the beef? Well, let's go on to simpler things, like the second law of thermodynamics. If you've ever taken a course in physics, you've all studied. The basic laws of natural science are governed by the laws of thermodynamics. Simply stated, the second law of thermodynamics says that all the energy in the universe, useful for work, kinetic energy, is in a process of running down. Entropy, E-N-T-R-O-P-Y. It simply means that everything in the universe, all energy and matter, is moving from a state of organization and complexity and is degenerating downwards to chaos and disorganization. This is a basic law of physics. We observe it throughout the natural world. Everything runs out of energy. Everything moves from organization downwards to chaos. This is why no one has ever invented a perpetual motion machine. Everything runs out of energy. Everything goes from organization downwards to chaos. For example, a lot of illustrations we could give about this. If you were to buy yourself a new car, I don't know, what do all you rich Canadians drive here? Mercedes-Benz, BMWs. You know, if you were to buy yourself a new 1993 shiny chrome-covered car and take it up here into the Canadian Rockies, park it up in the woods there, and just leave it there for 5 to 10 years. What would happen to your brand new, shiny, chrome-covered car? Besides being stolen, the guy says. Now, if it wasn't stolen, if you left it there long enough, you know, over a period of time, it'd soon begin to rust, soon begin to decay. Left there long enough, it'd soon begin to disintegrate. See, it's a basic law of physics. Everything goes from organization downwards to chaos. It's called the problem of entropy, the second law of thermodynamics. For example, I mean, any parent who has a teenage son or daughter, if you want to see entropy at work, all you have to do is clean their room sometime. And just leave it for 1 week. I guarantee you, you'll see entropy at work. It'll go from organization downwards to chaos. It's a basic law of physics. And we observe this throughout the natural world. Well, who can tell me what the problem is in regards to the theory of evolution? What's the problem? Let's go in the other direction. It's known in physics as the problem of entropy. You see, the laws or the theory of evolution says that everything is moving upwards to greater and greater complexity and organization all by chance. It's a basic theory of evolution if you go out here to the Museum of Paleontology. But the laws of physics state, folks, that everything is moving in the opposite direction from what evolutionists assume. Now, obviously, this presents a terrible problem for the evolutionists. And there are some who do understand the problem. For example, if you saw this week on Regis and Kathy Lee, they Monday interviewed Carl Sagan, the astronomer. And Carl Sagan said, well, all you need to have to overcome this is long periods of time. He says if you accept long periods of time, billions and billions of years, then anything is possible. I was taking a course down at the university in California, and I raised my hand one day. I said, you know, Professor, I said, that's like saying that if I were to take an airplane up over Calgary, Alberta, Canada, at about 5,000 feet, and in this airplane I had neatly stacked 10,000 3x5 cards. You know, the theory of evolution would assume that given enough opportunity, when I pushed out those 10,000 3x5 cards out the window, they would have enough time to randomly sort and select themselves to spell out, you know, Grace Baptist Church on the parking lot out here. Well, you say that's ridiculous. They're going to be flying all over the neighborhood. Well, you see, it's a basic law of physics that everything goes from organization downwards to chaos. So evolutionists like Carl Sagan says, well, what you need is simply a greater time span. You simply need a few more million or billion years, as he says, to allow organization and complexity to occur. You simply need a greater time span. Well, I raised my hand in class and I said, you know, Professor, I said, that's like saying that instead of flying at 5,000 feet, I'll now take the airplane up to 25,000 feet. Now at 25,000 feet, I'll push out those 10,000 3x5 cards, and they will have a greater time span in which to randomly sort and select themselves to spell out Grace Baptist Church on the parking lot out here. What's going to happen? They're going to be heading up towards Banff. They're going to be heading out towards Drumheller. You see, it's a basic law of physics, folks, that the greater the time span, the greater the chaos and disorganization. And every time the evolutionist adds another million or billion years, folks, he is simply nailing another nail to his own coffin. It's a basic law of physics. The greater the time span, the greater the chaos. If you're taking a course in evolution, just raise your hand sometime. I used to do this in high school. You just say, teacher, what do you do with the second law of thermodynamics? And if they don't understand it, explain it to them. But you cannot allow them to get away with their philosophical assumptions of faith. You must say, Professor, let's be scientific. What is the scientific evidence? Not your assumptions of faith. Well, then they come with what they believe is their last great argument. They say, well, wait a minute. What about the fossil evidence? What about all the monkey men? I mean, my goodness. Just go out to the Museum of Paleontology here in Alberta and you can see the fossil record of evolution over 4.5 billion years, they say, as you enter in. But what does the fossil evidence show? In the question and answer time, I'll give you a whole response to my trip out there today. That's another story. It's very interesting. For example, Newsweek magazine, March 29th, 1982, had an interesting cover story entitled The Mysteries of Evolution. On the cover, they had a picture of Stephen Jay Gould of Harvard. In this article, titled Mysteries of Evolution, let me just read what Newsweek magazine says. I quote, Stephen Jay Gould of Harvard and Niles Eldredge, paleontologists at the American Museum of Natural History, have collaborated on a paper intended to resolve a professional embarrassment for paleontologists: their inability to find fossils of transitional forms between species, the so-called missing links. Darwin and most of those who followed him believed that the work of evolution was slow, gradual, and continuous, and that a complete lineage of ancestors shading imperceptibly one into the next could in theory be reconstructed for all living animals. That was this idea here. Darwin and evolutionists believed that if evolution were true, you could reconstruct the gradual upward evolution from one species to the next by the fossil